Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and this evening we warmly welcome the family of Private Stephen Benedict Hocken, who are gathered here this evening, and the additional family members who are watching the live stream of this ceremony. His story will be told shortly by Commodore Nathan Robb from the Royal Australian Navy, who is part of Private Hocken's family. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Stephen Benedict Hocken. Stephen Hocken was born in Brisbane into the large family of John and Mabel Hocken. His father John was a waterside worker at North Mackay, where Stephen grew up alongside his siblings, William, Henry, Francis, Mabel, Margaret, Rhoda, Joseph, Philip, Paul and Rose. There is some uncertainty about how old Stephen was when he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in late July 1941. While he may have been 19 years and 4 months old, as he claimed at the time, some records seem to suggest he may have been only 16. Regardless, he became the 4th of 6 Hocken brothers to enlist. He was working as a shop assistant for Burn Limited at the time, and the company hosted a farewell for him, at which he was presented with a field service wristlet watch and a balaclava cap, knitted vest and socks. After a short period in a training battalion and a period of pre-embarkation leave, on the 29th of October 1941, he embarked for Malaya. In mid-December, Hocken joined the 2nd 3rd Ordnance Stores Company, which was responsible for the supply and administration of weapons and ammunition. As war broke out in the Pacific, Japanese forces invaded Malaya. Indian and British units in northern Malaya initially provided stiff resistance, but were forced to withdraw in the face of the speed, ferocity and surprise of the Japanese attack. Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaya, was taken on the 11th of January 1942, and delaying actions were undertaken as Allied forces retreated towards Singapore. On the 31st of January, British and Australian forces withdrew across the causeway that separated Singapore from Malaya. Barely a week later, Japanese forces attacked across the Johor Strait. When Singapore was surrendered to the Japanese on the 15th of February, Hocken and his comrades in the 8th Division were initially imprisoned at Salarang Barracks at Changi. But from May onwards, the Japanese began sending troops for labouring work elsewhere in Asia and the Pacific, including on the notorious Burma-Thailand Railway. Starved of food and medicine, the men were forced to work impossibly long hours in remote, unhealthy locations. By the time the railway was completed in October 1943, approximately 13,000 prisoners of war, including more than 2,600 Australians, had died, in addition to an estimated 80 to 100,000 civilians. But the worst and most dangerous period in a prisoner's life was travelling in captivity by sea. Overcrowding, sickness, disease, and the dangers posed by Allied submarines caused stress and anxiety. Conditions on these ships were beyond severe. Over 1,000 prisoners might be crammed into spaces suitable for a few hundred and given little food, fresh water, or adequate sanitation facilities. After the completion of the railway, Hocken was among some 1,300 Australian and British prisoners of war that the Japanese loaded aboard the Rukeu Maru. It was part of a convoy carrying mostly raw materials that left Singapore for Japan on the 6th of September 1944. The prisoners were all survivors of the Burma-Thailand Railway who had recently returned to Singapore. On the morning of the 12th of September 1944, the convoy was attacked by American submarines in the South China Sea. Rukeu Maru was sunk by the American submarine USS Sea Line 2. Prisoners who were able to get off the ships spent the following days in life rafts or clinging to wreckage in the open water. About 150 Australian and British survivors were rescued by American submarines. A further 500 were picked up by Japanese destroyers and continued their journey to Japan. Those who were not rescued perished at sea. A total of 1,559 Australian and British prisoners of war were killed in the incident, all missing at sea. Amongst the dead was Stephen Hocken. According to our family tradition, a member of the Hocken family was listening to shortwave radio when the announcement was made that the ship had been sunk. After the war had finished, a schoolmate of Stephen's told the family that Stephen had been with him after the sinking. The two of them were clinging to floating debris until Stephen said, "I can't do this anymore," and slipped into the water. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Stephen Benedict Hocken, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.